A millionaire laughs at brother who inherited only a lame donkey from their father. But a year later, a surprising revelation changed everything. The sun shone brightly, casting long shadows over the meticulously kept lawn of Ashcombe Manor. The funeral of Richard Ashcombe, a renowned millionaire and family patriarch, drew a crowd of guests. Among them was Edward Ashcombe, his older son, who was at the center of attention. Dressed in an expensive suit and sporting a smile that didn't reach his eyes, he delivered a speech that echoed across the vast estate. "My father was a true visionary," Edward proclaimed, gesturing dramatically. "He built an empire that not only enriched us, but also brought prestige to this city. And I, as his son, am grateful for everything he did, not just for me, but for all of you here today." Listening to his brother's words, William Ashcombe, who stood a little off to the side of the crowd, could not hide a faint expression of disdain. For Edward, everything revolved around status and wealth, while William felt increasingly invisible. After the ceremony, the ostentation continued inside the manor. Edward, surrounded by a group of friends that seemed more like vultures lurking, drifted away from the funeral. William, on the other hand, remained in a corner of the room, watching the scene with a mix of sadness and indignation. His mind wandered far from the glamour and riches. He thought of his father, the simplicity of the life he had always led, and the inheritance he received, a lame donkey. When the festivities began to wind down, Edward cast a disdainful look at William, who was seated in a corner with his arms crossed. "Look at you, William. What are you going to do now? Take care of your lame donkey?" Edward laughed, a sound that echoed in the room, and some of his friends joined in, making jokes about William's inheritance. "I think it's time for you to sign up for a farming course. The simple life suits you." With a heavy heart, William chose not to retaliate. He took a deep breath, maintaining his composure. "Edward, you may have the mansion and all the money in the world, but that doesn't mean you're a better man than I am." William's words came out with surprising calm, but Edward's expression turned to anger. "A better man?" Edward exclaimed, his tone almost insulting. "You inherited a donkey that can barely walk and think that makes you superior? I may have fake friends, but at least I have friends. You? You have an animal that can hardly get up. What are you going to do, chase after it on the farm?" Pain and humiliation mixed within William, but he stood firm. "Life is not about ostentation, Edward. One day you will realize that what truly matters are the people around you and how you relate to them, not just what you possess." Edward rolled his eyes, clearly dismissing his brother's words. "Keep dreaming, William. In the end, I'll come out on top. You've always been the weaker brother." William turned away, feeling the need to escape the suffocating atmosphere. As he walked outside, memories of childhood flooded his mind. He recalled the days when Edward bullied him, the cruel pranks and the small victories he achieved even in the shadow of his older brother. Those moments, although painful, shaped his resilience. He walked away from the mansion, seeking some fresh air, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Edward's life, filled with trivialities, was not what he desired. The lame donkey may not be much, but for William it was a symbol of his own struggle and determination. And despite everything, he knew he possessed something Edward would never have: the ability to love and connect genuinely with others. William walked slowly down the dirt road leading to his farm, the lame donkey by his side, dragging its feet awkwardly. The sun began to set, painting the sky with a soft orange hue. Despite the humiliation he felt during his father's funeral and Edward's taunts, there was a sense of peace in that moment. He appreciated the simplicity of life in the countryside, far from his brother's ostentation and disdain. As he passed by a tree, the donkey stopped abruptly, braying. William looked ahead and saw a small kitten stuck in a branch, mewing desperately. He hesitated for a moment, but then decided to help. "Come on, buddy," he said to the donkey as he approached the kitten. "We need to rescue this little one." At that moment, a young woman appeared, running towards him. It was Sarah, the local schoolteacher, always with a warm smile. "Hi, William, what's going on here?" she asked, stopping beside him. "This kitten is stuck. I'm going to try to get it down," William replied, reaching out his hand toward the animal. Sarah crouched down, observing closely. "Can I help?" Sarah offered, her voice filled with determination. "Sometimes it's easier if we have another person." "Of course, that would be great," William said, feeling relieved that he wasn't alone. Together they approached the kitten, trying to calm it down. "You're brave, aren't you, little one?" William spoke gently while Sarah began maneuvering the branches to free the kitten. After a few minutes of effort, the kitten finally broke free and jumped into Sarah's arms. "We did it!" she exclaimed, laughing as the kitten snuggled against her chest. William smiled, feeling warmth in his heart. "Thank you for helping me, Sarah. I wouldn't have been able to do it without you." "You don't need to thank me. I love helping," she said, petting the kitten. "You have an amazing way with animals. What else do you do here on your farm?" "Actually, I have a lame donkey," William replied, a bit embarrassed. "He's a little unique." Sarah laughed. "A lame donkey? That's interesting. I would love to meet him." William took her to see the donkey, who was curiously observing the scene. "This is my friend Manco," William introduced.
"He may not be perfect, but he has a huge heart." "Hi, Manco," Sarah said, extending her hand to the donkey, who sniffed her palm. "You have a wonderful owner here, you know." William watched Sarah interact with the donkey and felt happy. They spent hours talking and laughing as William showed her around the farm. "Here, time seems to pass more slowly," he commented, looking at the trees and fields around them. "It's true."
"Sometimes I wish I could live in a place like this, away from the hustle and bustle of the city," Sarah said, gazing at the horizon. "But don't you miss more action? People?" "No, actually I enjoy the tranquility," William replied. "After my father's death, I realized that material things don't matter as much. What really matters are the connections we make." Sarah nodded, seeming to reflect on his words. "You're right. Sometimes we get caught up in superficiality. I see that every day at school. The kids often care more about what they have than who they are." "Yes," William agreed, "and I've always felt a bit excluded because of it. Edward has always been the favorite, the rich, successful one. I'm just the brother who inherited a lame donkey." "Don't underestimate yourself, William. What you have is far more valuable than any wealth," Sarah said, looking into his eyes. "You have character, kindness, and a connection to the land that many lack." William smiled, feeling encouraged. "Thank you, Sarah. You have no idea how much that means to me." The two continued to talk, sharing stories and laughter until the sun completely set, leaving the sky filled with stars. In that moment, William realized that perhaps the true inheritance he had received was not the lame donkey, but the genuine and sincere friendship blossoming before him. Edward Ashcombe was at a turning point. The trust he had built over the years, sustained by his fortune and a circle of interested admirers, began to crumble like a house of cards. That morning, he prepared for a crucial meeting with his investors, confident that his latest financial moves would take him to even greater heights. Looking in the mirror, his reflection displayed an arrogant smile, but a shadow of doubt was starting to creep into his mind. "Today is the day I'll show everyone who really runs things around here," he muttered to himself, adjusting his tie with a dismissive gesture. In the meeting room, Edward entered with the confidence of a king. He launched into a triumphant speech, praising his own achievements and ignoring the unease that hung in the air. "With this investment in technology, we're going to multiply our fortune in a matter of months. We just need courage and bold vision," he proclaimed, while his investors nodded in approval, although some exchanged worried glances. After the meeting, Edward retreated to his office, where he found his friend and financial advisor Richard. Richard's expression was grave, and that immediately sparked apprehension in Edward. "Edward, we need to talk," he began hesitantly. "What's wrong now? You look like a ghost." Edward shot back, crossing his arms. "It's serious. I investigated the project and found out you're being deceived. Those numbers you saw? It's a pyramid scheme. You could lose everything," Richard said, his voice tense. Edward didn't believe it. "You're crazy. I'm Edward Ashcombe. No one can fool me like that," he shouted, his arrogance overflowing. "Edward, please listen to me. I just want what's best for you. Review the documents. Analyze the invest. If you don't do this now, it could be too late," Richard insisted, trying to bring reason to his friend's clouded mind. "Enough. You're fired. If you can't see the greatness of what I'm building, then you don't need to be here," Edward snapped, the fury pulsing in his veins. Richard turned away, disappointed, but not before casting a sorrowful glance at the friend he once knew. The door slammed shut with a bang, echoing the loneliness that was beginning to settle in Edward's heart. In the days that followed, the pressure on Edward mounted. News of his imminent downfall began to circulate. He received calls from creditors demanding payments, and the weight of reality began to crush him. In a moment of desperation, he decided to visit the family mansion, a symbol of his former glory. Upon arrival, he was greeted by an embarrassing scene. Reporters were invading the garden, trying to capture the fall of the magnate in their lenses. "Edward, how do you feel knowing you're about to lose everything?" one of the reporters shouted, shoving a microphone in his direction. "Get off my property, you have no right to treat me like this," Edward replied, his voice filled with rage, but desperation was clear in his eyes. He turned away, but not without noticing the stifled laughter of some of his former friends, who were now retreating like shadows, unwilling to associate with his disgrace. That night, sunk into his luxurious sofa, Edward felt more alone than ever. The shine of gold and parties no longer warmed him. He grabbed a bottle of whiskey and poured a glass, downing it in one go. "What did I do wrong?" he whispered to himself, as the shadow of William emerged in his mind. He was always the weak one. "I am the strong one. I am—" Edward started to repeat, but the phrase got lost in the bitterness of his tears. In a flash, the image of William's lame donkey flashed through his mind. What did he have that Edward never managed to appreciate? A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was one of the staff members who hesitantly announced, "Mr. Ashcombe, you have visitors. Your brother William is here." "William? What does he want?" Edward grumbled, irritated. But deep down, there was a small hope that his brother might offer some form of comfort. When William entered, there was a calmness in his demeanor that contrasted with the storm brewing inside Edward. "Edward," he began, his voice serene, "I need to talk to you." "About what? Do you think I want to hear about your pathetic inheritance?" Edward shot back. But the anger didn't carry the weight it once did. He felt a mix of resentment and a strange curiosity. "I came here because maybe you need help," William replied, his voice steady yet gentle. "I have a plan." "A plan? And what do you know about plans? You only have a lame donkey," Edward mocked, but there was a slight tremor in his voice. "Sometimes what seems like a curse can turn into a blessing," William said, challenging his brother with a look. "I want you to look beyond what you've lost and see what you can still gain, including your dignity." Edward fell silent, William's words echoing in his mind. He realized that perhaps his brother had something valuable to offer after all. As the sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, William Ashcombe watched the lame donkey, named Tobias, grazing peacefully on the family farm. Life on the property was simple, but William had learned to cherish every moment, especially after the humiliation he faced at the hands of his brother Edward. He approached Tobias, stroking the rough fur of the animal. "You're the only one who understands me, aren't you, Tobias?" he said, smiling. The donkey's response was a gentle bray, as if in agreement. It was then that William noticed something peculiar. Tobias seemed to have an inexplicable affinity for a particular path, covered with tall grass and wildflowers. The donkey turned around, as if inviting William to follow him. Curious, William decided to accompany him. "I guess you want to show me something, don't you?" He spoke to the donkey as he began to walk alongside him. He felt a mix of excitement and hope. Could it be that the lame donkey had a greater purpose? As they walked, William spotted Sarah, the young teacher he had met a few weeks earlier, sitting in the shade of a tree. He waved to her, and she smiled, quickly getting up. "Hey, William, what are you doing with that donkey?" she asked, tilting her head to get a closer look at Tobias. "I'm not exactly sure," William replied, still intrigued. "He seems to want me to follow him. I'm curious to see where he's leading us." "Can I come with you?" Sarah asked, a sparkle in her eyes. William hesitated for a moment but soon nodded. "Sure, come on. We might find something interesting." The three of them followed the path, and as they progressed, the vegetation around them grew denser. William and Sarah chatted animatedly about the small things in life, the challenges they faced, and the dreams they still held on to. The donkey, for his part, seemed to lead the expedition, stopping occasionally to sniff flowers or munch on some fresh grass. "You always seem so calm, William," Sarah said, looking at him with curiosity. "How do you manage to deal with everything? With your family situation and all that? Disdain from your brother?" William sighed, looking down for a moment before responding. "I've learned that, in the end, material things don't matter as much as the relationships we cultivate. Edward may have the mansion and the fortune, but I prefer simplicity and truth. And you, Sarah? What makes you happy?" "I love teaching," she replied, a genuine smile on her face. "Watching the kids learn and grow brings me immense joy. It's fulfilling, but sometimes I feel like I need something more, something that makes me feel alive." William watched her closely. He felt there was a special connection between them, something that went beyond words. Maybe we should go on adventures together more often, he suggested a bit shyly. Life is full of surprises, and we can discover a lot if we're open to it. Their eyes met for a moment, and they both felt the depth of that moment. But soon, Tobias interrupted the atmosphere by halting abruptly and braying, drawing their attention. William laughed, breaking the tension. Looks like Tobias is in a hurry. The path led them to a point where nature seemed wilder. There were loose stones and exposed roots. Yet the lame donkey continued to move forward, as if he knew exactly where he was going. William and Sarah had to be careful, avoiding slips as they climbed a small steep trail. "Do you think we're getting somewhere?" Sarah asked, gripping a tree to steady herself. "I hope so," William replied, a bit out of breath. "But even if we don't find anything, I'm just happy to be here with you." Finally, after the effort, they arrived at a more open area where a small cave was hidden among the rocks. The donkey stopped at the entrance, as if waiting for them. William and Sarah exchanged excited glances and approached together. "Are you ready, Tobias?" William asked, petting the donkey. Inside the cave, the light that entered was soft, and soon William's eyes adjusted to the darkness. There, in a corner, something sparkled. William stepped closer and, crouching down, discovered what appeared to be an ancient map, covered in dust, hidden beneath a rock. "Look at this, Sarah," he exclaimed, carefully holding the map. "It looks like we found something really special." Sarah stepped closer, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "What do you think is drawn on it?" It could be a treasure map. Her excitement was contagious, and William felt his heart race. The donkey, for his part, brayed excitedly, as if participating in their discovery. William slowly unrolled the map, and as the lines began to reveal themselves, he realized that the true adventure was just beginning. "Let's find out what this means," he said with a determined smile, as Sarah looked at him with admiration. William's life was about to change, and he could hardly wait to see where that path would lead them. William was in his stable, petting the lame donkey he had inherited, when he heard distant shouts from Edward approaching. He lifted his head and saw his brother, pale and disheveled, storming onto the property like a hurricane. Edward's mansion, once a symbol of wealth and power, was now a place of despair. William felt a tightness in his chest at the sight of Edward nearing, arrogance replaced by palpable desperation. "William!" Edward shouted, his voice echoing across the field. "You need to give me what's left of the inheritance. You have no idea what I've lost. I can't be left with nothing." William took a deep breath, keeping calm. He knew Edward was in a dark place, but he couldn't let his brother's anger and desperation take over. "Edward, you need to calm down. Let's talk. What happened to you?" Edward advanced, fury in his eyes. "Talk? You want me to talk? You have no idea what it's like to lose everything. All my friends, all my businesses, everything has crumbled, and you, with your lame donkey, still have the audacity to feel superior to me." "It's not about that, Edward," William replied, his voice steady. "I'm not superior to you. I've just found a different path. What you've done with your life isn't my fault. I just wanted peace." "Peace? You're living in an illusion, brother," Edward shouted, gesturing angrily. "While I built my empire, you hid away on your farm with that animal. What do you know about the world?" The lame donkey, who remained by William's side, stepped forward as if sensing the tension in the air. William looked at the animal and, in a moment of clarity, decided it was time to speak the truth he had kept to himself. "I discovered something, Edward. The donkey, he led me down a different path, and on that path I found something you no longer have. Hope." Edward laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Hope? You think that's going to help me? I'm ruined, and you still talk about hope?" "I'm not talking about empty hope, Edward," William insisted. "I found a map that could lead us to a forgotten gold mine. The donkey guided us to it, and this could change our lives." Grr. Edward's expression changed instantly, momentarily setting aside his anger, replaced by curiosity. "A gold mine? Are you serious? Did you really find something?" "Yes," William replied, trying to remain calm. "But it's not just about the mine. It's about what we can learn from each other, about what really matters in life." "And what would that be, William?" Edward challenged, crossing his arms. "What could be more important than money and power?" "Family," William said, looking Edward in. "True legacy isn't what we leave behind, but what we build together. You and I, brothers, we have a chance to rewrite our story." Edward hesitated, conflicting emotions passing across his face. He wanted to scream, but something inside him was beginning to open up. "Do you really believe we can reconcile? After everything I've done?" "Yes," William replied, firm in his belief. I believe we can find a way together. You don't have to be alone anymore, Edward. What matters to me is that we can rebuild what we lost. Edward looked at the lame donkey, which now seemed more than just a simple farm animal. He remembered their childhood, the laughter, the playfulness, and the love that existed between them before ambition tore them apart. What if I don't know how to reach out to you again? He murmured, his voice softer. It's one step at a time, William responded with a smile. Let's explore the mind together. Let's discover what it really means to be brothers. Edward looked at William, his heart heavy with the guilt and pain of years of arrogance. But at that moment, he decided it was time to put his pride aside. All right, William, let's go together, but I promise I won't be easy to deal with. Neither will I, William said, chuckling softly. But that's part of the journey. We'll learn from each other. And who knows, we might find more than just gold. With a new purpose, the brothers prepared to explore an uncertain but promising future together. William and Edward were panting after days of searching for the mine, but their determination kept them moving. The sun began to set, painting the sky a vibrant orange as the two brothers, now united by a common goal, faced the steep trail leading to the mine's entrance. The lame donkey, once seen as a symbol of disdain, was now becoming an unexpected guide for the new journey they were embarking on. Do you really think we're going to find something here? Edward questioned, doubt evident in his voice. He looked at William, trying to hide the insecurity that consumed him. I just don't want this to be another one of your illusions, brother. William paused for a moment, locking eyes with Edward. It's not just about what we can find, Edward. It's about us, about what we can become together. The mine is just a symbol of what we can build if we work side by side. Edward furrowed his brow, absorbing William's words. He had always been the older, successful brother, but now he found himself in a vulnerable position, relying on someone he had once considered inferior. What if I don't know how to do this? How can I trust you when I always thought I was the one who had to lead? Maybe it's time for you to listen more and speak less, William replied, a gentle smile appearing on his face. No one is born knowing everything, Edward. We all learn along the way, and that's what I want to share with you. The lessons life has taught me. Edward took a deep breath, feeling that weight on his chest. He wasn't used to opening up, to being vulnerable. The lessons you've learned? Like how to stay humble while surrounded by false people? How to survive in a world where everyone seems to want to take advantage of you? Exactly, William agreed, his voice steady. The people around us may be there for interest or for love. Learning to distinguish between the two is one of the greatest lessons we can have. And you, Edward, are beginning to realize that now. You've always been surrounded by people who wanted your wealth, but I learned to value those who stand by my side even when I have nothing. Edward looked down, a mix of shame and reflection washing over him. He remembered how he had always treated William as inferior, someone to be disappointed. I didn't know. The truth is, I always wanted to be better than you, and that blinded me. Instead of seeing you as my brother, I saw you as a rival. The donkey, as if understanding the conversation, stopped and brayed. William laughed. See? Even the lame donkey knows that rivalry gets us nowhere. We're family, Edward, and that should be more important than any material wealth. The trail ahead was becoming more challenging, but both brothers were determined to move forward. They helped each other climb the slippery rocks, their hands intertwining, and in that moment William felt the barrier that had always existed between them beginning to crumble. I don't want you to become someone you're not. I just want you to be yourself, William said, helping Edward up after a small slip. And if that means letting go of arrogance, then so be it. We need each other, and that's not a weakness but a strength. Edward looked at his brother now with a new perspective. Maybe you're right, I've been so obsessed with being the best that I've overlooked what really matters. But what if I fail again? What if I can't do it? Failing is part of learning. What matters is that we're in this together. We'll find that mine, and even if we don't, we'll have achieved something much greater. Our relationship, William replied, his gaze resolute. Trust was growing between them, and as they continued to climb, the weight of rivalry and resentment seemed to dissipate. What had once been a competition was now transforming into a joint effort, a journey of self-discovery and reconciliation. Each step they took was shaping a new bond, one that could endure time and adversity. After days of intense searching, William and Edward finally reached the bottom of the mine. Darkness enveloped the place, but excitement pulsed between them. With lanterns in hand, they illuminated the space. revealing walls covered in glimmering minerals and a floor strewn with rock fragments. Edward's heart raced, and a wide smile spread across his face. "Look at this, William. We found it," he exclaimed, almost unable to believe his eyes. William, on the other hand, felt a mix of joy and reflection. He turned to his brother, his expression filled with meaning. "Yes, we found it, but what do you really want to do with it?" The question hung in the air, as if the echo of the words reverberated against the walls of the mine. Edward hesitated, his excitement fading slightly. "I mean, it's a gold mine. We could have everything back, everything we lost." "Everything we lost, or everything you think you lost?" William replied, his tone gentle yet firm. "True wealth isn't just in that gold, Edward. Look at us. Look at what we've overcome together." Edward closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing his brother's words. The reality of his life so far began to take shape differently in his mind. As they ventured deeper, they found a larger chamber, where the glow of some minerals reflected the light from their lanterns in a mesmerizing way. In the center of the room, something caught William's attention. He approached and, with trembling hands, brushed off a layer of dust from what appeared to be an ancient wooden box. "Edward, come see this," he called, curiosity shining in his voice. Edward rushed over, adrenaline surging again. "What is it?" he asked, leaning in to look. William tried to open the box, but it was locked. He glanced around, and by chance his eyes landed on a rusty piece of metal lying nearby. "I think I can use this as a key," he said, picking up the object and forcing it into the lock. The crack of the wood echoed through the cavern, and the box sprang open, revealing a collection of ancient artifacts. "Look at this!" Edward exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "This must be worth a fortune." "Maybe, but see what's here," William replied, pulling out a medallion-shaped object. "This seems to have special significance." Gently, he wiped away the dust, revealing a family emblem they didn't recognize. "It's ours, Edward. This is a symbol of our family." Edward frowned, excitement giving way to introspection. "You're right, William. This is part of our history." Silence fell as they contemplated the significance of what they had just discovered. William, sensing the weight of the moment, decided to share what he felt. "You know, I always thought our heritage was just about money and possessions. But now, seeing this, I realize there's something much more valuable." Edward looked at his brother, the frustration and arrogance that had long dominated him starting to fade. "What do you mean?" he asked, genuinely curious. "The true inheritance is what we carry with us, the lessons we learn, and the connections we make. Looking at you now, seeing your vulnerability and sincerity, makes me believe we're on the right path," William explained, emotion thick in his voice. Edward took a deep breath, reflecting on each word. "I always believed wealth was in material things, but maybe I've lost my way." He looked at the medallion, and a new determination began to form within him. "What do you suggest we do with this?" "Let's discover it together," William replied with a smile. "Let's understand our history, and more importantly, use this as a means to reconnect and learn from each other." The atmosphere in the mine was charged with possibilities. Edward and William, now united by their discovery, were ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the true treasure lay in the journey they were about to share. With the discovery of the gold mine, a new chapter opened, not just for William and Edward, but for the entire community. The news of the mine spread quickly, bringing hope to all who had faced financial struggles for years. Always modest and generous, William decided that the true value of that fortune didn't lie solely in material wealth, but in the ability to make a difference in others' lives. On a sunny morning, as the sun illuminated the small village, William and Edward gathered in the old central square, surrounded by friends and neighbors. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation and excitement. William climbed onto a small wooden box, trying to calm the crowd's excitement. "Friends, neighbors," William began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Today, we're here not only to celebrate the discovery of the mine, but to share what this discovery means for all of us. This mine isn't just about gold and precious stones. It's an opportunity to rebuild our community." Edward, standing beside William, watched his brother with admiration. He had never seen William so engaged and passionate about something. The transformation in his brother was palpable. "William is right," Edward agreed, taking the floor. "I used to see money as power, but now I realize that true wealth lies in how we can help each other. Together, we can accomplish much more than alone." The faces of the villagers lit up, and murmurs of approval spread through the crowd. Let's use the resources from the mine to revitalize our village. William continued, a spark in his eyes. We'll build schools, improve infrastructure, and most importantly, create job opportunities for everyone. We need to ensure that no one suffers as we have. A woman in the crowd, Donna Rita, raised her hand, visibly moved. And what can we do to help? We want to be part of this. Her voice carried the determination of someone who had fought and survived. William smiled, feeling the warmth of solidarity. We need your ideas and your energy. This is a community project. Let's come together and create a plan. Each of you has something to contribute. Edward, who had been more reserved until then, felt the energy of the crowd. He turned to William and, with a touch of vulnerability, said, I want to help. I want to learn from you all. I don't know how, but I want to be part of this. Edward's words surprised everyone, but for William, they were a clear sign of change. Of course, Edward, William replied with an encouraging smile. You have so much to offer. We'll work together as brothers. This is more than a mine. It's a chance to rewrite our story. In the days that followed, the community united in a collective effort. Meetings were organized and everyone contributed their ideas and skills. Edward, despite his past shortcomings, committed to using his business experience to help structure the financial initiatives. He became one of the main organizers, listening carefully to everyone and ensuring that every voice was heard. As the weeks passed, a climate of hope and optimism enveloped the village. William and Edward often walked together through the square, discussing plans and making sure everyone was involved. During one of their walks, Edward stopped and said, You know, William, I never thought I could feel so connected to this community. It's like I'm living for the first time. William looked at his brother, surprised by the sincerity in his words. The connection comes from the love and work we're doing together. When we help others, we find our place in the world. The day of the big celebration was approaching, and the village was preparing for a festival in honor of the new beginning. The square was being adorned with flowers and colorful banners, while children ran around joyfully, full of energy. As the sun began to set, a group of villagers gathered to prepare a large communal meal. I've never seen so much joy in one place, said Donna Rita as she helped set the tables. This is what it means to be a community. And as night fell, the villagers gathered around a lit bonfire, sharing laughter, stories, and dreams. Music echoed through the square, and everyone danced, celebrating not just the discovery of the mine but the renewal of hopes and bonds that united them. Edward, watching all of this, realized that true wealth wasn't in the mine, but in every smile, in every gesture of solidarity that blossomed in that magical moment. The shared joy was the real legacy they were building together. The sun was slowly setting, painting the sky orange and pink as Edward and William found themselves on the porch of the farm. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken emotions, and the smell of the freshly wet earth after the recent rain brought back memories of childhood that both had tried to bury. Edward, still dressed in expensive clothes but now a bit simpler, looked at his brother, who was sitting in a rocking chair, his face calm and serene. William, Edward began, his voice hesitant, I need to talk to you about what happened between us, about everything. William lifted his gaze, his deep brown eyes reflecting the light of the sunset. I'm listening, Edward. What do you have to say? Edward took a deep breath, as if each word about to leave his mouth was a weight to be carried. I was an idiot. My whole life I only thought about myself, about my fortune, my ego. I didn't see how important you were, how much you suffered because of me. He hesitated, emotions close to the surface. I'm sorry, William. I truly am. The sincerity in his older brother's tone made William's heart ache. He had waited years for this moment, but the pain of unspoken words still echoed between them. Edward, you don't have to apologize. I forgave you a long time ago. Your arrogance hurt me, but what really hurt was the absence of our relationship. We were brothers, and you pushed me away. Edward lowered his head in shame. I didn't know how to deal with it. The truth is, I was scared. Scared that you would surpass me. Scared that everyone would see I wasn't as strong as I pretended to be. I couldn't just be myself around you. You didn't need to be anything other than who you are. William replied, his voice gentle. I always admired you, even when you didn't notice. Each of us has our struggles, Edward. You're not invincible. Edward looked at his brother, his gaze now more vulnerable. I spent so much time trying to be perfect that I lost sight of what really matters. The truth is, only now, amid this crisis, do I realize that what I had wasn't happiness. but a facade. While you found joy in the little things, in the people around you. I learned that true wealth lies in relationships, in the interactions we build throughout life, William said with a slight smile. That's what kept me sane, even when you weren't by my side. A comfortable silence settled between them, allowing the words to resonate. Edward finally turned to William, determination starting to shine in his eyes. I want to change. I want to be the brother you deserve. I want us to rebuild our relationship. William, feeling the sincerity in the proposal, nodded slowly. That will be a process, Edward. We need time and trust, but I'm willing to try. So am I, Edward replied, feeling a weight being lifted from his shoulders. I want to know more about you, about your life, your struggles. I want to understand the simple things you value. Let's start with the lame donkey, William joked, a wide smile spreading across his face. Believe me, he has a lot to teach us. Edward laughed, a rare and genuine sound that echoed in the air. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm curious about what this donkey can teach us. He taught us humility, perseverance, and above all, the importance of looking beyond appearances. William replied, his serious tone now mixed with lightness. All we have to do is look at our history. The conversation continued, filled with laughter and shared memories, as the sun slowly hid behind the hills. The reconciliation, though still recent and delicate, began to blossom between the brothers. They knew the path would be long, but change had begun, and for the first time in a long time, both felt hope for the future, united by renewed ties. William was lost in his thoughts as he walked through the mine, the dim light of the lanterns illuminating the damp, history-filled walls. The discovery of the mine had been a turning point not only for their finances, but also for his relationship with Edward. Now, more than ever, he felt there was a greater purpose in all of this. As he explored a deeper corner, something gleamed amidst the dirt and dust. Curious, he crouched down and pulled out an object covered in mud. As he cleaned it, he realized it was an aged diary, its yellowed pages worn by time. "Edward, come here," William called, his voice echoing through the dark caverns. Edward, who was examining a nearby rock formation, turned quickly. "What happened?" he asked, a mix of curiosity and apprehension in his tone. As he approached, William held the diary with both hands as if about to reveal a treasure. "Look what I found," William exclaimed, a sparkle in his eyes. "It's a diary. It seems to be from our father." Edward frowned, a mix of distrust and interest rising in his gaze. "What does it say?" William carefully opened the diary, the pages creaking in protest. He began to read aloud, his words echoing off the cold walls of the mine. "Dear diary, today I observed the lame donkey more closely. Sometimes I feel like he holds secrets that go beyond what we can see. I believe he is more than just an animal for the farm. He is a part of our history." Edward listened in silence, his expression softening as his father's words filled the space around him. William continued, "My hope is that, over time, my children will understand that true wealth isn't just material. There must be something deeper in all of this." "That's profound," Edward murmured, as the realization began to set in. "I never thought our father felt this way. I always saw him only as a businessman." "Me too," William replied, turning a few more pages. "Look, here." He read another passage. "The mine was left a secret, not just as a treasure, but as a lesson in humility and teamwork among brothers." Edward was in shock. He knew that one day we would be together here in this mine, didn't he? "It seems so," William said, his heart racing. He wanted us to learn together, to overcome our rivalries. Edward looked down, deep in thought. I didn't know he had this vision. I thought what mattered were material possessions. But now, seeing this, it all makes sense. "We can do something about it," William suggested, feeling inspired. "What if we turned this mine into a community center? A place where people can learn, grow, and connect?" Edward looked up, his eyes shining with the idea. "That would be amazing. We can teach the children about our family's history, about the importance of humility and teamwork, and we can also help the community." "Yes, and the lame donkey can become a kind of symbol for this. He's the key to this whole story and what we've learned," William said, smiling. "Imagine the kids hearing about him and his significance." Edward, now with a genuine smile, replied, "I never thought a lame donkey could be so meaningful. It seems he united us in a way I could never have imagined." "That's the true legacy our father wanted us to have," William concluded, feeling a wave of gratitude. "It's not about gold or possessions, but about love, learning, and unity." The two brothers left the mine together, the journal in hand, with a new purpose pulsing in their hearts. The sunlight enveloped them, as if nature itself were celebrating their new partnership. Edward looked at William, his gaze full of respect and admiration. "Thank you, brother, for showing me what really matters in life." William smiled, a feeling of relief and happiness filling the air around them. "We're in this together, and together we'll make a difference."